Hey everybody, surprise. I decided to just jump on Instagram and talk about natural family planning and just a whole lot of things that go along with that. So 4 things that I'm going to talk about. I can't count. 4 things. All right. So parish support, I'm going to talk about pastors. So if you're a priest watching this is my wish list. This is what I wish you would do. Natural family planning after 45. Might have experience with that. Pornography and healing, and what that can look like, and then how young buck Catherine Whitaker thought about NFP versus what old and experienced Catherine thinks about it now. So first, pastors, if you're watching this, please talk about it from the pulpit, and don't just talk about it saying if you're not doing natural family planning, you're failing, but instead provide resources for people in your parish. And that means like collecting different couples in your church who have a lot of kids, who are struggling with infertility, who have lost a child, who have carried some heavy crosses. Maybe they have a special needs child. I mean, all those people need to be heard, because whenever we went through marriage preparation, the couple stood up and basically told us that if we weren't practicing NFP, that we were going straight to hell. They also had like 10 kids. I have never felt more unwanted and more shamed in my life, and it took us years to recover from that. So please get the couples that you need in your parish. They exist. You just have to ask for them, and they desperately want to share their story because everybody wants to be welcome in the pew. So encourage your diocese to have better resources, encouraging people they can take classes online, but give them the support that they need. There are couples in your church that want to mentor or be resources for other people. I mean, they're coming to Instagram because we're here, but I know that they exist at your parish. So just ask them and lead people towards Jesus, instead of telling them you must abandon all artificial contraception or don't come back to the church. Just, it's baby steps. Y'all know this. You know that the faith life is a journey, but we've had some really wonderful pastors who have walked with us through some really hard things, like the night I miscarried, for example. And then we've had some priests who have done some real damage in that aspect of our marriage. So this is just to plead all the pastors and priests watching, that you support your families and reach out to the people in your parish who have real life experience with that. So, and I'm even an advocate in your youth ministry programs, particularly high school, that you should be employing the theology of the body curriculum, teaching our young people the dignity of their body and where that comes from a place of spirituality. I think that's important. So I'm talking to you two youth ministers, so nobody's off the hook here. We're not talking about things like infertility, and we're not encouraging our families to encourage other families regardless of their family size. Like how many kids you have doesn't qualify you of how good you are as a Catholic. So all those things, I wish we did better as a church. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about is NFP after 45. So I'm going to hold on to that one because I want to talk about what NFP looked like when I was young. I mean, when we were young and having babies, and it was easy, right? Like, I want to have babies, and so we're just going to do this thing, and then hopefully a baby comes. And it felt easier. I was super hyper fertile, so it came easy to me, but I know that's not the case with everyone. But I also was like happy clappy about NFP. I was like, it works. It's amazing. It's so good for your marriage. And then we had a preemie. And then we had to discern a baby after having a preemie. And that's when NFP gets hard. Like that's when you're abstaining and you're like, what phase am I in? And I really think my husband's hot, but I still have to abstain. And it gets hard, and it gets more nuanced, and it gets trickier because your body's changing. And so to all you young women out there who are telling people how great NFP is, thank you for sharing your life experience this season of your life. People need to hear that. But also remember that there are women who are in different seasons of their life who need to hear that NFP is hard. It is not easy. And the fruits of that have been beautiful. But please don't paint the picture that if you just do NFP, your marriage will be stronger, because it's a process. It takes us a while to get there. So if I could go back and tell anything to my younger self, it would be encouraging and be confident, but also know that all those small sacrifices that we made along the way, like all those times that we abstained, all those times that it was hard, really just prepared Scott and Catherine as we got older for the bigger crosses that we would carry. So like, it feels like a big thing, but when you abstain like that 1 month, right, for however many days, sometimes it feels like a lot. But that's just a small sacrifice that you make that has prepared Scott and I for some massively heavy crosses in our marriage. And ultimately, I think that's what NFP is teaching me, is not so much about my fertility or when we should abstain, but it's really teaching me more like, this is not about me. I'm celebrating my spouse, but I'm also sacrificing for my spouse because I love him. And that's teaching me to sacrifice for my God because he loves me more. So I think when we talk about what does NFP look like in your 40s, is that you take the lessons of all those years of abstaining, or all those years of making sacrifices, or all those years of having, in some cases, a lot of babies in a very short amount of time, that it teaches you how to sacrificially love, and that it's not for naught. You know, it allows you to give of yourself. It allows you to see that the process is bigger, and it also allowed me to, I think, love my spouse and not use my spouse. So, yes. I'm on the end of hyperfertility. I know some people are on the end of infertility. We had 1 year in there where we were infertile, but of secondary infertility. But it's all hard. I mean, people need to hear that. It's hard, but the hard is worth it. And please, if you can, make this number one priority. Get yourself a community of people that can support you. So there's a group of women. That group is pretty small. But we talk very frankly and very openly and honestly about what we're sharing. And it's not like a time for us to get together and bash our husbands, but rather it's a time for us to get together and say, so are you also experiencing this? And then there's solidarity, right? Like you don't feel so alone. And then we're like groupthink. Okay, so how can we fix it? How can we make it better? And they're spiritually grown women. Okay, we're talking about holy sex here, holy marriages. And so it's important to surround yourself with women like that. And it might only be 1 or 2 women, and that's okay. But as you get into your 40s, those women are my life song, y'all. That's how I'm navigating through this. And absolutely, I'm having those conversations with my husband, but you need to also have them with your girlfriends. So just want to share that. And then pornography and healing. I mean, I know that there are a lot of marriages who carry the cross of sexual assault or sexual trauma or pornography. And Yumi and NFP is doing a beautiful series this week. I will link it in stories after I link this. And they're going to be talking to different people. I think they're talking to a doctor. They're talking about Mary and Jerry Lindenberg are going to be talking about pornography and healing from that. And so I would encourage you to reach out to people online, but also people in your real life who have gone through some heavy things like that so that you can figure out what works best for your marriage. I'm not an expert and I can't tell you what you should do, but I can tell you that not talking about it and that not finding a way to bring it out into the light in your marriage will only serve to tear your marriage and not apart and not bring it back together. So if you find yourself struggling with pornography or addiction, there's a really great podcast, and I'm talking to you ladies. There is a podcast that Claire Swinarski did on the Catholic Feminist. It was with Kelsey Scott. Kelsey, I can't remember how to say your last name. Anyway, she talks about pornography from a female's perspective. Nobody talks about that, and it was eye-opening for me to just hear what Kelsey had to say and how we're led to temptation and how we can be redeemed from that. So it's an incredibly powerful and moving podcast. So if that's something that you feel like you might be struggling with, then I would encourage you to listen to that. And then Integrity Restored for the guys. Matt Fradd has a really beautiful resource in that. The Porn Myth is the book that he wrote. So those are just a few resources. So I would encourage you to look into those. And finally, I just want to say this, is that I don't think that it's effective, and I don't think it's helpful to shame people for where they are in their journey of natural family planning or fertility awareness, that it's important that we lead them towards Jesus. You know, what really encouraged Scott, and I'll end with this, is what really encouraged Scott and I to even consider natural family planning and like to break free, I think, from artificial birth control, there was a couple at our parish in Indiana, Mike and Denise, and they were like the NFP couple. And they would share their story, and they were just normal. Mike was in the military, and Denise was like a hippie from the 60s from California. And they were just honest, y'all. They just shared their story. They didn't say you're doing it wrong. And this was a room full of engaged couples. We were on the presenting team, helping these couples prepare for marriage. And I always think, boy, those couples that heard that when they first started out got a gift that they didn't even know it probably then. But for Scott and I had no idea how much Mike and Denise would change the trajectory of our life. And I'm deeply grateful, because had they shamed us, or had they said, like, you're doing it wrong, you should do it different, or don't you know better, or babies are always a gift, like this stuff that people say that isn't helpful. They didn't say that. They just loved us, and they listened to our story, and they listened to why we struggled, and they just listened. So I'm encouraging you to listen to the people in your life. Listen to the mamas and the women in your life who are struggling. Listen to those young women who are not married, who are wanting to get married and have a family. Or those women in your life who are married and they are infertile and they are struggling with the massive cross of infertility. I'm just asking you to listen to them and to love them, and to just keep slowly turning their gaze towards Christ, because eventually they're going to get there, and it may not be on your timeline. It might not even be on their timeline, but it's going to be on God's timeline. So just lead with love. So I hope all that was a little bit helpful. There were just a few more questions that people asked, and I thought it might be a little bit easier to answer them here than in 8,000 Insta stories. So if you have any other questions, feel free to DM me and I'll send you a message back. But thanks for today. It's always enlightening and always a gift to share how God has worked in my marriage with my husband. It's not an easy topic. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I'm always here to listen and to answer your questions. So have a beautiful night, and be here all week. Feel like the microphone will be here all week, but I won't be talking about NFP the rest of the week, but certainly the rest of the night. Happy to answer your questions. So thanks, y'all. Love you.